my second choice behind Old Fashioned.
Okay.
And he finished fifth,
Okay.
beating 14.
All right.
But he came back and ran big. He's 3 for 4 lifetime, all on synthetic. Our first guest this morning continues to have a terrific Gulfstream meet. Later on this afternoon, he will try to bag the biggest prize of the South Florida season when he sends out There Goes JoJo in the Florida Derby. Ladies and gentlemen, live via telephone from South Florida, Mr. Ken McPeek. Kenny, Mark, and Mike welcoming you back to Down the Stretch.
Thanks for having me again, guys.
Hello again,
Thank you, Ken. Ken, in a moment, our audience is going to watch a piece of There Goes JoJo's January 10th allowance victory over, among others, Quality Road. And he's going to be number 6 in here, and he'll be in third as they turn for home. Kenny, this was his first start since last July. What sent him to the sidelines after the Bashford Manor?
He had a ligament that he pulled in a stifle last summer at Saratoga that we needed to give him some time off for. It wasn't anything major, but it was one of those deals where you just needed to do what was right, and it cost him the end of his 2-year-old campaign, but I think in the long run it's going to be a positive.
Kenny, was this the type of performance, and granted, you had 2 speed horses, including Quality Road, go after each other, so you did benefit from that type of pace scenario, but your colt ran awfully well off the bench. Were you expecting that kind of effort first time back?
We really were. I was surprised his odds were as long as they were. There were a lot of, I guess you could say, hype horses in the race, and of course Quality Road went on to do, what we've seen. But, he got overlooked a little bit. But he is a very, very talented horse, smart, really seems to adapt to any situation, and he's the kind that make us all look good.
Kenny, in his preparation, in his training for his next race, which would be the Fountain of Youth, I remember reading a couple of quotes from you saying, I don't have him 100%. Talk to our audience more specifically about that. Was his training for the Fountain of Youth thrown off, or were you just using the Fountain of Youth as a prep to get to this afternoon?
Well, I was going to take him to the Risen Star in Louisiana, and then a couple of works before that race, he scoped with a lung infection that wasn't terrible, but we didn't want to stress him, to the point where it went the wrong direction. So I backed off of him and actually missed a workout from that episode. And on a scale of 10, I think the vet said he had a 4 or a 5 mucus. So that's one of those things that I learned. Actually, Tahana Rum was a horse that I fought lung infections with in his 3-year-old campaign. And I learned that you just can't press those things. You just got to let them clear themselves up. It cost us a little bit of time, but, we just needed to let him get strong and sort it out, and it worked out good.
Kenny, our audience is about to take a look at the last 5/16 of a mile of the Fountain of Youth. There Goes JoJo will be number 2. He will be entering the screen in 5th. Considering you missed the work with him, and he wasn't 100% for this race, talk about this effort.
Well, I think it was a decent race out of him, considering that we didn't press him that hard for the race. We just got a nice base under him and kind of let him go out there on his own merits. It's early in the season at that point, so we didn't really feel like we had a lot of pressure on us. And I expected him to run well just off a lot of natural talent, and he did. I think he got a little further back over a pace that, was kind of questionable, and then Kent made a huge move in the middle of the turn. And I'd really like to see that move saved today for more like from the 3/8 to the wire or even the quarter pole to the wire if he can save it that long.
Kenny, how's he trained since the Fountain of Youth? We've had, really the winter in South Florida basically has been dry, but recently there's been some rains, and I noticed his last work was over a sloppy track. So how's he been training? How's he coming in to this afternoon's Florida Derby?
Well, the previous works before the slop work were fantastic. I mean, we worked him against other horses. I had him sit on the outside and pounce down the lane, and I've used a lot of repetition and really longer gallops to prepare him for the 1.125 miles, with a focus on finishing from the quarter pole to the wire a notch faster almost every day. And he's a horse that's come into it flawlessly. The slop work was a little tricky. I really didn't want to work in the mud. Got caught with some bad weather down here on that Saturday. and then Sunday the track was sealed as well. But I made the call that we've got to do something with him. We actually made the work longer and slower and steadier as opposed to quicker if we would have been on a dirt track.
Kenny, all 4 of his starts up to this point have been around 1 turn. I think, at least up to this point, we can classify him as a closing sprinter miler. Those types don't always stretch out with a great deal of success. Your feelings about 2 turns this afternoon and 9 furlongs, how's he going to handle it?
Well, mentally, I don't think he'll have any problem with it. Physically, you really don't know till you stretch him out. But the truth is that this horse should have run 2 turns last year. If he hadn't had the stifle injury, I believe he would have been in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. But those things happen. And the timing of some of these other starts, of course, we tried to go 2 turns in the Risen Star, but then he had the lung infection, so we couldn't go there. I was thinking of running him in the Holy Bull, but then I chose to run Dangerous to Society. We know how that turned out. And so it's, logistically, that's just the way the ball bounced. I actually like his pattern where he ran 5 furlongs, 6 furlongs, 7, then 8, and now 9, and hopefully 10. So that's very rare that they fall in line like that. So, obviously it's up to him and Ken DeSormo today. We've done our part.
All right, Kenny, what's he going to have to show you this afternoon at 9 furlongs for you to consider 10 furlongs on the first Saturday in May?
Well, I think that the focus should be on quality road, and even I've told Kent that. Just watch that horse. It would be nice to be in pouncing range when you need him. I would hate to see him, 7, 8, 10 behind that horse early in the race, but at the same time, you don't know how the pace unfolds. At this point, we need to run second or better, and third may possibly even get us into the Kentucky Derby. But the truth is that I think he needs to be first or second to really deserve to go, and we'll see. I mean, he's got a big chance, and physically he's doing perfect. And at this point, hopefully it all falls in place.
Well, 1 race after the Florida Derby, Kenny will be running in the Appleton. You will be running Bold Start, shown here 3rd in the recent Richter scale. Why'd you choose the Appleton on grass for Bold Start?
Well, we've been entering an allowance race for the last several weeks. It hadn't gone. We've been kind of handcuffed as far as that goes. I'd love to run him in a money allowance race, condition allowance race, but it hadn't existed. The horse is doing well. He is 2 for 4 on the grass. He won his first 2 career starts on the turf, and he really probably should have won a stake at Saratoga on the turf. If you go back and look at that, he got Calvin Burrell rode him and tried to take the rail trip, and the rail closed. So he didn't get beat very far that day, and I think would have won otherwise. So he's capable of running on the turf. 7.5 is a good distance for him. He was making up ground going 7/8 in the last start, and he's a very versatile horse, a lovely horse to be around. Larry Carroll, the owner, has let us have complete carte blanche with him, and I think in some ways he should fit in there. Hopefully, those are tricky races because it's tight and it's fast and a lot happens in the turf course, but he's capable.
Kenny, before we let you go, very early in the Gulfstream meet, and again, congratulations. You and your staff have enjoyed a sensational Gulfstream meet. Early in the meet, I gave our audience a turf horse to watch. Short term for Gulfstream, but long term because I thought this horse had all kinds of potential. That lightly raced horse, who I thought was full of promise, was from your barn, and it was National Kid. Now, I know I'm not going to like the answer to this question, but what happened to National Kid?
Well, he came out of the race. It seemed to be fine. We gave him a work back, and I did not like the way he came out of the work. He was uncomfortable. It was one of those deals where really we couldn't pinpoint anything. He didn't fracture anything. We sent him off for bone scan. The horse was fine. It seems that he may have strained something in his elbow, which is a very, very rare injury. But it seems to have rectified itself relatively quickly. He is a very talented horse, and you will see him back again. Currently, he is galloping at Keeneland every day on the poly track. So we've been trying to, get him back to where he was, and he's been going flawless. But he just needed a little R&R to sort out a small issue, and that's our program. I mean, when they come up, they all have problems. Let's not deny it. A lot of racehorses have aches, pains you have to deal with, injuries, and when they come up with something, we try to take the time to give the horse plenty of time to rectify it so that they're 100%, and then bring them back on a schedule that suits whatever problem that they had.
Kenny, as always, we appreciate your times. Thank you so very much for joining us this morning on Down the Stretch. Again, all congratulations on a sensational Gulfstream meet, and all the best later this afternoon with There Goes JoJo in the Florida Derby and with Bold Start in the Appleton. And I hope we'll be speaking with you again very soon.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck,
Thanks,
Ken.
Kenny. Ken McPeek, ladies and gentlemen.